Yeah, so look, I'm going to go pretty deep, pretty quick on the content. Only got a short period of time, so standard stuff. Just get in state. Um, because right now we don't have lots of numbers. We could probably don't need to keep doing chat. So, um, Oscar, you and I were just talking about it at the start. So here are on this slide, there's a few different frameworks which all revolve around fatality prevention. Which one of these or more of these are you guys using at the moment? Drop in the chat or unmute. Maybe Oscar, you were saying, are you guys using CCMN energy-based safety at the moment? Or just one? Okay, CCM, yep. And Sarah, okay, Artie got CCM major hazard facility. Awesome. Hello, Danielle. Thanks for joining us. Um, and Sarah, I'm going to guess you guys both CCM and energy-based safety. Is that the
MH,
letter?
yeah,
Yeah, that's wandering
a
around.
little bit
That's
of
right.
everything.
Yeah, a little bit
Depends
of
on
everything.
what leader you talk to.
Understood. Understood. And I know, Danielle, you just dropped in, mate. You can either drop in the chat or here. We're just talking about there's a few different frameworks and which one is in use by either yourself or your organization at the moment. I'll keep an eye on the chat, mate. Um, all right, so there's a few frameworks just quickly touching on. So I think most of us on the line are familiar with critical control management, which has been around forever, come out of, well, not forever, let's say 2015, 2016, come from Australian resources industry and then has permeated lots of places. And when we start to bring these frameworks together, you look, it's strong. I'm a big believer at going pretty hard on it. And when I'm looking at the other frameworks, there's potentially some opportunities. And one of them here is around, um, yeah, it's a bit quiet here in the physics, which the energy-based safety can bring, and also at the point of the human touch point on the work, which is where critical steps can help. Energy-based safety. So here's the Yardi, you mightn't be familiar with this one. Um, the term, well, the idea of energies, damaging energies, has been around for a while. However, the energy-based safety framework, which I guess has been socialized probably what, in the last 2 years, I would guess, um, has really helps us quantify, put some thresholds around the amount of energy release, and above a certain threshold, we can start to, or the literature demonstrates there's fatality prevention is more likely, a little bit around controls as well. So yeah, has some useful aspects, but certainly isn't necessarily an end-to-end management system, which is what you might get with critical control management, or major hazard facility management. Critical steps, uh, I'll absolutely share. It's more of a relatively new framework for me compared to the others, and it's all about what is, you can see the wording there. What is that single human action that as a result can trigger an immediate, irreversible, intolerable harm? And so the example, and they even talked about it at the energy safety conference, is okay, when the action of jumping out of a plane, um, that's the human action. If they don't have a parachute on, then yeah, there's no fail to safety idea or return. So yes, not as great for identification, but certainly good in allowing us identifying that touch point to the energy. And major hazard facility, I won't talk too much about this, but it's pretty good as a wrapper. Um, no worries. Thank you, Danielle. Got that. Thanks, mate. Um, wrapper. So safety critical elements, process safety generally is where these items appear, and very good at looking at the systems and strategies overall. All right. So does this match? Bit of a yes, no around the grounds. Does this match what's either happening within your business, or what you're seeing as a trend specific to your industry. I certainly see this in a few of the industries that I'm across. Yes, all these things like TRIFR and all those other things we're managing, yeah, pretty good at, but we see this sort of steady state in fatalities, and people are really asking about, well, what next? What else can we do? Um, all right, and so what I'm going to go through today, and for those that'll be listening at a later point in time, is you know, what else can we do? How can it all fit together to help us strengthen those aspects? Um, Roof dropping candidate. Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Yeah, fatalities flat. I think most of you know of me, and again, for those who'll be watching later point in time, so yeah, almost a quarter of a century in this space. Started in mining as a safety graduate a long, long time ago, and for the last 7 years have been doing work with the tier ones and tier twos around fatality prevention. Been pretty blessed with that. So work with a lot of organisations, a lot of jurisdictions to both understand the theory and practically apply it. So that's what I'll bring today to is talk about how we can do this. I've already talked about moving fast. Yeah, I'm working on the arms session when I think and reflect coming out. And I have my daughter 5 push-ups each time. And we'll keep it interactive, again, smaller numbers on the line at this point in time. So good opportunity to chat and interact. So in terms of the framework, three things. I'm going to talk about three strategies and three actual points where we can talk about how they fit together, and then we'll have some good time for Q&A at the tail end of that, and I'll talk about what you can do at the end if you need some further information. And yeah, so being recorded, uh, be able to socialize a copy of the slides, and then also yeah, I'll talk about how you can get a copy of got like a one pager. It's pretty busy one pager, but looks to encapsulate what we go through here in a one pager. All right, so let's jump into this. So yeah, if you think about the different frameworks and what we use, you know, what is it? No, there's nothing new. Everything's rebadged. So if you've been following safety literature, I know a bit. I don't know all of it, but we can see a lot of these things have come from a source, and we can, energy certainly being one thing that's been talked about for a while. It was reasons about the human error and conditions. Um, yeah, I think that's I'm not going to add more to that. However, when we look at these frameworks and with someone who might suffer a fatality, the idea is we have a source of energy which has a pathway, and then we have this point of contact with a person at the interface, which results in harm. So I'll give you a little bit of time just to soak in on that. Can anyone think of an example um, of what that could be? So an energy source, which unfolds via a pathway, and via a person into harm. Anyone? So if you think about, this is kind of like the bow tie sits here. We got the energy source and then the touch point there. If anything, can anyone release of object under tension? Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, the energy source here, something under tension. The uncontrolled release, whatever that could be. What is it? Be springs. I don't know. Choose your things, and then a person deals with it. It comes across it, and we got harm. So it's almost like a bit of a timeline aspect. So this is not a bad frame when we're starting to think about these in those three frameworks. And through that lens, I like to think about a bow tie kind of mirrors this. Has everyone come across bow tie before? Just get a quick yes, no. I'm going to assume if all of you have been doing some work in this space that bow ties, yeah, cool. So that kind of mirrors it, isn't it? So we've got well, maybe we've got the energy source, but this is the uncontrolled release bit here, but we've got the energy maybe over here at the timeline. Then we've got a pathway, release of energy, uncontrolled release via a pathway where someone gets contacted or exposed, and then we have the consequence. So we're going to overlay these frameworks back against a bow tie, and we're going to use, loss of control of vehicle, let's say vehicle incidents as the frame. We won't do yes, no, but I'm sure that's a pretty easy one that people are familiar with, and I'm sure within your businesses you have people driving around. So it's fairly real. So into the first one there, the energy. So find the energy that can kill. Um, Energy-based safety. Yeah, of everything inside, what can actually kill a person? So this is cool here. So first, yes, no. Um, at this point in time, is your business clear on what are the hazards that can kill people, not just what can hurt them? So Oscar, you got a yes. Yes. What about you guys? Sarah, Artie, Danielle, yes. Danielle, no, or not yet. And I'm going to assume, Sarah, you guys have done a fair bit of work, but I assume in there, yeah. Um, cool. There's no right or wrong. And we know this might be present, and we've seen this, don't we, historically, when there's a focus on recordable injuries, potentially there's a lack of focus on um, fatality injuries or fatality energy sources, fatality scenarios, and we get surprised. And let's touch wood. Hopefully, we don't get surprised with those, and we don't have these happen within the. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, hidden noise, Danielle. Um, we've seen you can choose your example of industries historically that have sort of gone down that pathway. And I wonder, do any of these sound familiar? Either you seeing these in your particular um, experience within industry, or these may be present within your particular business at the moment? And keen if one of these really pops out that um, of these that might be representative of either what you've seen or happens within your business. And so these are some examples of signs and symptoms where businesses maybe haven't yet got to that point where they're clear on what are those things that can kill. We might see these sorts of symptoms. Danielle, yes to most. Yeah, thanks, mate. And where we want to be absolutely is okay, out of everything, out of all the noise, what are those essential few um, risks, scenarios, unwanted events that could result in loss of life? And they're the ones that, 80/20 rule, they're the ones that we put some energy around. And so this is where I like the energy-based safety framework, where they have, well, not they, the framework provides us with thresholds of energy. And if we are able to quantify these energies as much as possible, it can get challenging when you've got energy sources that are more challenging to quantify. But where we can, and then we can almost apply, okay, well, if it's almost binary, okay, if it's more than 1500 joules, then it's a yes in terms of that. That is a unwanted event that we want to manage or do additional management of. And also, again, most of us are probably familiar with energy-based safety. It also gives us, in terms of, okay, well, what are the energy sources? It gives us a framework and some categorizations through which we can actually scan across these energy sources to then see and start to quantify. So, which of these energy sources cause your last near miss or a significant incident within your business? Don't have to get the details. Just curious on the energy source. What have we got? I'm just trying to think of one that happened with our clients um, that I could think about. I think there was a vehicle to vehicle interaction. So I think that was mechanical there. Zero gravity, failure of lifted load. Oh, okay. Thanks, Sarah. Yep, gravity. Danielle, what about you guys, Oscar or Artie? What was an energy source for you guys um,
The electrical, chemical pressure, temperature.
Electrical, chemical pressure. Okay. Multiple. Cool. Thanks, mate. And Oscar, did you put one in there?
Yeah, I mean, mostly we have mechanic energy that, I
Yeah.
mean, everything that we do is mechanic. Also, we have gravity as we handle
Yeah.
that as a law of lifting and, you know, energy.
Gotcha.
I mean, mechanical and yeah.
Thank you. And I feel like the energy wheel, I think it's really useful um, from the perspective is that the language can be the same, at the top of the tree all the way to the front line. Potentially, if I was doing some deeper work, I like to go. Um, I use some frameworks that have more subcategories of each of those. So I think, yeah, Danielle, you even said, okay, well, you've got gravity, it could be lifting, but it could be gravity people or gravity dropped objects and those things. But I like that the energy wheel, certainly from a frontline perspective, is easier to understand. All right, so we start to think about the energy then. Okay, so here is some wording here, but if we thought about two vehicles coming together or loss of control of a vehicle driving at a certain time or driving above a certain speed, most likely could result in a fatality outcome. So we know vehicles would definitely be one that would be in here. Now, getting right in the weeds, right in the tactical, um, broad brush risk assessment. So this one isn't about um, start again, Christian. So a tool that I use with our clients, and that's part of the critical control management framework, is what is a risk-based process we go through to identify our, um, let's say, our damaging energies. And one tool is a broad brush risk assessment. So you can see here, for example, where businesses have, what's the unwanted events, what's the scenarios of how that could happen, and doing some of the work. So this green column represents what can be added into the broad brush risk assessment process, which maybe isn't traditionally done. And this is where energy-based safety can add value is, okay, are we able to quantify the context for the context of our business, quantify this to then give more rigor? Well, is this above the 1500 joules or below? And if it's above, then it's most likely going to be classed as material if we set our threshold at single fatality. Um, so that's an example of how it can practically be applied, and that's how I'm using it, with a lot of our clients. All right, quick round the grounds. We've just been through a bit of content. I think I might have asked this anyway, but self-assessment against what we just talked about from 1 to 10. 10 is awesome, very good. 1 is no. We talked about how you might be able to apply energy-based safety to help with threshold identification and potentially some categorizations of the particular unwanted events. So we've got some 8s. Okay, that's cool. Oscar, Danielle, 5. Okay, middle ground. Thank you. So, all right. So rounding that out, we know, no surprise, we hear it all the time. Things that hurt people aren't the same things that kill people. Um, no worries. Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, find the lethal energy first. We've probably already done the work potentially on that, and we can use energy-based safety to help us quantify the energy source and then work out, is it above the threshold? All right, next one. And this is certainly new, or I like this type of thinking. Okay, so can our controls survive human error, or can we build out controls that can survive human error? All right. So yes, no. Would your critical controls, or if you're using energy-based safety, direct controls, would they survive if someone's having a bad day? What do you, bit quick yes, no? What do you think? Oscar, no. Sarah, not sure. Artie, what do you think, mate? Danielle's yes. Okay, that's good. Keep an eye out for Artie. Not sure. Cool. No worries, mate. All right. And so imagine if, and I see this all the time, half of these critical controls or direct controls are things that potentially aren't true controls. Or they rely on the person to be infallible, be the robot, operate 24/7. Um, there's a strong reliance on that. And when we get signs and symptoms of those potential pain points is some of these, which you can read there, like so many controls that organizations class are important. Or there's confusion on the front line. Feel free to sing out if any of these are really relevant to your business or that you see. We talk about lots of critical, but then maybe it's what Daniel's saying, signal to noise, everything's critical, but maybe nothing is. Or we go out and check some things, and our checks are fairly broad and very generic and don't really give us a return on investment. Um, Hello, Diego. Thanks for joining us. All right, so where we want to be, again, what is those essential few controls that we've applied some rigor to identify and that can withstand a human error, or can withstand a mistake. So a little bit about some control frameworks. So in critical control management, there's some particular language that is used or to provide a definition of a control. One interesting thing in that world is the idea of support activities and verification activities. So support activities are things that the organization does that enables the health of a control, but of itself is not a control. So training, education, safety management system documents, potentially preventative maintenance, all of those, supporting activities and verification activities, things we do that check on controls, but of themselves are not controls. Audits, inspections, reviews, monitoring, etc., etc. So in the world of critical control management, there's some frameworks there which are useful to separate out, again, the noise from those things that are true controls. In the energy-based safety, there's some frameworks here around what is a direct control versus an alternative control. And then for the direct control here, and this is, I guess, why I like the energy-based safety, where it talks about, does it hold under error even when a worker makes a mistake? And then there's some, from some of the other areas as well, some terminology. So all of this is pointing to, across all the frameworks, can it survive a human error? We don't want it to be so reliant on people for it to be perfect. And so this is certainly from a critical control management perspective, critical risk management perspective. This is, I think this language has come in relatively recently, and I think maybe in energy-based safety it's been around probably almost maybe longer. So where does this leave us? We need to do the work, if we haven't already, to really go back and check on, if we've already done the work historically, check on our list of either critical controls or direct controls, or those things that we say are really, really important. One, do they meet the definition of control? And then two, have we, of that list, can they withstand a human error, or can they withstand someone making a mistake? And if they can't, then is there some more work that can be done? So if I was going to then start to construct this bow tie around these frameworks, we have our loss of control of the energy source, the mobile equipment, and what I'd be classing as controls are those controls strategies that can withstand the human error. And it's okay to call out, let's say driver awareness and all that sort of things. There are some places we can put on the bow tie these support activities, but however, we're not classing them as controls, and we're not confusing our list of controls with things which don't meet the definition. And unfortunately, what I've seen time and time again is I call it the just throw stuff at the wall, because Some organizations fall in the trap of, more is better. And so they think just more things on the list means better protection. And unfortunately, there's um, false sense of security is my terminology. All right, I'm not going to go into these ones. You can look at that. So again, around the grounds from 1 to 10, how does your organization sit or industry sit with your either critical controls or direct controls holding up to human error? Where would you put yourself from 1 to 10? Zero is an unsure. What about you guys? We've got Diego, Oscar's a 6. Okay. Artie's a 7. That's pretty good. Diego or Danielle, where would you guys sit on that? You have any insights? And it is hard if you haven't done this work before. It's just a pure guessing game. Diego up to a 6. Okay. All right. So key takeaway. Yeah, demand controls that can survive human error. Danielle, mid, maybe 5. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. All right. So then we start to look at the idea of the critical steps, protect the moment of release. So again, as I said, disclaimer, I haven't done as much work in critical steps as I has with the other frameworks, but I've got enough and understanding to see how this can all pull together. So what do we people think here? Okay, we've got a great designed framework. It looks shiny. We meet all the definitions. All the documents add up. However, who's got control of the energy source? The second is released. Almost a rhetorical question, but essentially, who are they for your business? What's an example of a population group there? So who has control the exact second the energy is released? Who is that for your business? Have a look at the chat there. All right, yep, that's it. Frontline worker, Artie, you got production team operator. Okay, yeah, cool. I think Oscar for you guys, yeah, probably the same, wouldn't it? You've got mining people, Oscar directly people in the operations, yeah, 100%. Um, I've seen this, maybe you've seen this as well. Well-designed system. However, someone has still been hurt, and potentially a well-embedded system or well-communicated system. And we thought, okay, people understand, people know, and still we end up with exposure to a damaging energy and potentially a significant exposure to that, and potentially we can get surprised on that. So again, some signs and symptoms of areas that could look like that. And this is really starting to get pointed around this. But how good are our pre-job briefs? I know the energy-based safety does start to give us a better framework there around talking about the energy sources. But are we clear on those essential steps? The point of no returns. Procedures thorough but potentially broad, which allows time for improvisation, which isn't a bad thing, by the way. I was talking to someone yesterday around that. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much on that. Where the idea through the critical steps lens is what's the one action that must go right, or what's the one action that beyond which is heck, we can have an irreversible. Here we go. So this is the language. The human action that would trigger immediate, irreversible, intolerable harm if that action or preceding action is performed improperly. So I gave the example before at the start. If I'm going parachuting, that point in which I jump out of the plane is the critical step through this framework. Because if the preceding action was performed improperly, the harm will happen all at once. Well, however long it takes to fall to the ground, irreversible, the energy is now released. I can't go backwards in time and get to a different state. And yeah, it's going to be intolerable for me once I contact the ground. Um, and also it talks about, yeah, okay, so the critical step is here, but what's the important action? So again, the parachuting example, what is the action that offsets this? The thing that happens, and we want to, the opportunity is asked for what is the critical steps and or any critical steps identified, well, what are the risk important actions that need to take place? And starting to call those out, document those, and build them into our processes. So what could it look like? Starting to get more tactical now is if we have an energy source. So let's say, for example, the energy source was the loss of control of a vehicle, so the driving. So as the energy source, one way through that is then we'll walk through what are the different activities that happen for driving within the particular business. And once going through that, looking for where are the critical steps in that. And for each of we'll find where the energy is released, which then gets us to the point of, okay, well, what could be the critical steps? And compare it to the 3 I's, which was intolerable, immediate, and irreversible. So it's a different lens. And so, for example, here, I did a little bit of work on this. So if we think about some of our common risks or common hazards, which might result in single fatality, here could be some examples of critical steps. And you can have a bit of a look there. I'm certainly doing some work with the client right now on confined space, articulating what is the confined space, and risk in itself is interesting. And then, yeah, getting to the point, what is the critical step in all of that stuff? We do lots of things, but what is the actual activity we can get to that is the critical step? And then once we get there, then we can go, well, what is the risk important action? And then we can rally around that with some of our prevention strategies. So yeah, every critical step is the same shape, a person crossing a line past which the outcome cannot be undone. And it takes a bit of thinking, like you can see the language here, again, new for me or relatively new for me. The language here is a little bit different from our traditional, what a critical control management framework might give us. And this is where I see how this can add value to our processes. I'm not going to talk about this. This is some extra critical step language, which we won't go into. So, okay, back to the practical and tactical. So where does the rubber hit the road? And again, disclaimer, I'm relatively new in integrating this. This was an example I did a few months ago, and then I've got another one, which is more an update. So let's say, for example, going back to our bow tie, we could have our loss of control event for our bow tie.
Christian,
Yes,
Christian, a question, please. Could you
go for it,
please
mate.
go back to the last slide?
This one?
Yeah, yeah, just to have a look at this. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no worries. And these are more critical step centric terminologies, which I didn't want to unpack too much. Just want to sort of take the theme of the point of no return from a human action perspective. So if we have our traditional bow tie here, the loss of control of mobile equipment, and then if I'm not talking about here at the moment, but our standard causes. Okay, so we could have brake or steering failure. And one of our engineered direct controls could be the braking system and maintenance regime. We could have a loss of traction on wet, steep grade, and one of the controls is the design of our roads. So our standard sort of pathways, yep. Then if we did the work on critical steps and risk important actions, then how we could enhance our bow tie is those critical steps could be a threat. So operator commits machine to a motion on a grade or descent, because that could lead to loss of control of mobile equipment. However, we're seeing the specific critical steps that could lead to that and adding to, so I wouldn't necessarily say classing as controls if they don't fit the definition, but what are those risk important actions that either we have in place or should put in place that are those essential things that are in place prior to or that help us ensure these actions don't result in intolerable, irreversible, or immediate harm. So we'll have time to come back to this and if people have questions. So that could be one way which I played around. So the critical steps could be a cause, and then it gives us an opportunity to dissect in the risk important actions or positive controls that need to be in place. Another way more recently, which I played around with this, which is currently working through with the client at the moment, was, and I know this looks busy, but same example again, we've got a unwanted event. This is around confined space or exposure to toxic irrespirable gas within or outside a confined space. Got our standard causes. And when we did the work for, well, what are the critical steps when it relates to confined space? We saw the critical steps. There's a few different permutations, but it's when a person crosses the plane. And instead of us having, someone crosses the plane as a cause over here, we did the work to class it as a life-saving action. So, which is okay. Well, what is the human action that's almost that controls or prevents that? So you can see the wording: only enter the confined space once a safe atmosphere and all entry controls are confirmed in place. So it's almost the flip side of the critical steps, because the critical step would be entering the space without all those things in place. So we just pancake flipped it to say, well, the action, the human action, so using control terminology, the human action is this. And that's where we've dropped them in. And they still marry up with our traditional definitions of controls, just to help separate them out. Because for this particular business, if I started talking about critical steps, it'd just blow them away. They're not even there. They're still struggling to identify controls. So I've chosen not to use critical steps language. I've used the framework, but called them life-saving actions. They have life-saving rules. Depending, we won't unpack life-saving rules, whether we agree with that or not. But by calling these life-saving actions, then they can look at these and work out, well, from these, which may be life-saving rules. So coming back to, life-saving rules, I've seen them done poorly and done well. Done poorly, which is this list of things that are so broad, generic, or don't add value, or if they are specific, then organizations have put punitive punishment if someone does the wrong thing, makes a human error, you broke the action, okay, off you go. So I never used to be much of a believer, but now looking through the lens of critical steps, I can see, okay, there are specific human actions beyond which could result in, intolerable, irreversible, and immediate harm. If we can identify, well, what is the human action that people could do? For example, here, could these actually form a list of life-saving rules which actually add value and are based in a risk analysis process? I'll leave it there. I won't unpack this one, conscious of time. And we'll have time to have a bit of Q&A around this because can get people's thoughts. Put yourself on 1 to 10 here. So we've just gone through a bit of a framework looking for human action, the critical step, risk important actions or conditions that can precede a critical step. How does your organization fit in terms of understanding the specific moment and offsetting that? Oscar, you gone 5? Okay, where are some other people sitting here? Diego, Danielle, Artie 7. Hey, that's pretty good. Danielle, various human behaviors. Yeah, absolutely. And that's interesting terminology. We don't want to rely on human behavior only, but yeah, I get you on that one. Okay, so rounding this one out, Diego 6-7. Okay, thanks, mate. Yeah, it's about protecting the moment of release. Can we get to that point? Where is that point of energy release beyond which irreversible harm or intolerable, irreversible, immediate harm? And what else can we do? So bring these three ideas together. Um, Fairly simplistic diagram. So part of our fatality prevention process is firstly identifying what are all the unwanted events that can lead to loss of life or, damage or significant environmental harm, whatever it is. If we use energy-based safety framework of the 1500 joules, then, well, first of all, we can do additional work to quantify, if we can, as much as possible, quantify the nature of the energy to then work out, does it meet or exceed the 1500 joules? If it is, then the literature tells us it is likely a fatal outcome if that energy source was released and the person was exposed, which then gives us a yes to it being material for us. For each of those, when we go through and do our bow tie, our risk analysis, we know we want to double down in terms of, well, controls. So let's say, because we have controls and controls, so let's say either those things we class as critical controls using critical risk management language or direct controls, if we're using energy-based safety language, need to survive human error. That's what good looks like. And there's potentially some work for us to do to divvy out those things that can't survive human error and either class them as not as a critical control or direct control. It could be an alternative control or just a control, or it could be a supporting activity. And if we review the process that sits behind it, so for example, confined space, okay, you go, this is the start and this is the end. Where are those points of energy release and what are the critical steps? And then what else can we do inside our risk tools to either cross-reference back to our existing control set, because we might have existing controls that address that, or there could be some additional risk important actions or conditions that we identify, and the opportunity is to define what those are and make sure they're in our management system and used and applied. So what I'm seeing, again, I haven't talked too much about MHF stuff today. After doing this work and applying a few times, I think they all have use case. They don't conflict. They can integrate. Takes a little bit of thinking to do that. We can use, for example, a critical risk management lens as the process. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. You can have that. All right. Back to you guys. We've got 10 minutes, so time for a quick bit of chat. You can either throw in the chat or you can unmute. Keen to hear any ideas, insights, key takeaways from you, because it's pretty technical. Even myself, it plays with my brain a bit, but keen to get any insights or ahas or something from people. You either unmute or throw something in the chat. Give people a little bit of time to soak and share something. What do we think? Oscar, and integrate CCM, EBS, critical steps. Yep. AIM. And I don't feel like I mean, you saw what I did there. I don't think you've got to throw everything out. It's just some tweaks to existing artifacts or deliverables that may be in existence. What do some other people have as an idea? Takeaway. Key takeaways, getting down to what an actual critical control, how we move that to front. Yeah. Gee, if you can do that one, Sarah, that'll be a step change in itself. And that's when I do our critical risk management training or critical control management training, that's what we talk about is we don't want to confuse our front line with everything. In my mind, what good looks like, before they undertake a task, how could they, how could there be a loss of life? And what is the one or two things that must be in place, no matter what, be it a critical control, direct control, whatever the word is, what must be in place no matter what, and what do they know what to do if those things aren't in place? And is it okay for them to stop? That was another interesting conversation I had with someone recently. Thanks, Sarah. What about Diego? I like the example of integrating control steps, bow ties, as calls barriers. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, mate. And you'll see, yeah, you get a copy of the slide pack so you can see how I've played around with that. Yeah, it's taken me a bit of thinking to work that out because the last thing I wanted to do was just throw a new thing at our clients. They just go, we're full already. So yeah, how can we integrate it? That's cool. Diego or Danielle, any insights there? You've unmuted Danielle. Go for it. And if you're talking, mate, I can't hear you. Uh, I don't know. Zoom gremlins. Yes. Rather than chat. Yeah, cool. And Diego? Everything. Bow ties. Yeah, cool. All right, Danielle, wait for your stuff to come through, mate. All right, so rounding them out again, and then we can go to Q&A, or people can unmute now if you've got a general question or another comment. Yeah, vital lethal energy, controls that survive human error, and what are those? What's the point of no return, and what else can we do there? Yeah, thanks, Danielle. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's the exact challenge I have day in, day out. Don't come in and tell me that my baby's ugly, but maybe, how can I make it look a little bit more beautiful? All right. So let's do general Q&A. Oh yeah, if you want to talk more, like I could go way more into this. I've got other stuff that sits behind this. Happy to have a catch-up call whenever. You guys know where to find me. All right, question. How many MUEs do companies typically come up with? Have seen companies go activity-based, too many MUEs, too many, but oh yeah. Oof, that one's close to my heart. Um, Thanks, Danielle. Let's rip off that one. And please, if other people have a question, throw it on the list. So if I go back here to the the broad brush risk assessment, which you might have heard me talk about when I was over there in the energy safety conference. Yeah, to me, what good looks like is a list of unwanted events. Hang on, I'll go back to one that makes it's a bit easier to see. Sorry, I'm going to all the way back to get the better table. Sorry, bear with me. Where was it? Here. Yeah. So when I work with businesses to do their broad brush risk assessment, in my mind, what good looks like is, well, what's the unwanted event? And the release mechanism is where we sort of get the scenario-based thinking. So if this was fire, like an easy one is, so the unwanted event is fire. And then, on an atypical mine site, we might have 6 different types of fires, kind of a bushfire, grass fire, mobile equipment fire, chemical fire, I don't know, fire from hot works, whatever those things are. And this particular column here is how we bundle all those things together under the header of fire. The unwanted event is fire. Yeah, we might have different types. So that's the model I apply. Sometimes I have to take organizations through the process of, because they have high risk activities. I say, that's great, I understand, but a high risk activity may consist of multiple energy sources, which may have multiple unwanted events. Say for example, working in a confined space, we could have electrical, we could have engulfment, you could have gas, you could have thermal, from heat, all those sorts of things. So when we're pulling this together, we have our list of unwanted events through a risk-based lens. Separately, we have I call it a process map, where we do the work, follow a 3-tiered structure. We can chat more about this if you want, mate, where we map out all the activities. Because I say, well, tell me all the stuff that the organization does, That's what the process map does. From that informs what are the risks. So first of all, so that's one thing about activities versus unwanted events. How many do companies typically come up with? So if I'm doing work on a single mine site, let's say a surface coal mine, and they set, because also it depends on where they set their threshold. Let's say single fatality risk threshold, somewhere between, let's say, 20 to 30. I haven't, and I've done a fair few of these. I haven't, if I work with an organization, they've got more than 50, then something's a little bit skew-if, unless they have almost every energy source under the sun. So 50 feels a bit much. If I look at a mine site and they say they've got 10, then I'm thinking something's undercooked. And then sometimes we have this blended combinations, or people want to combine things. So, an example could be driving on site and driving off site is an example. Some businesses, lots of energy sources on site, but very few off site. So they said, we'll just put it all in one. Where some other businesses, they do so much off site driving and movement, we just separate them out. So I don't know if that helps, mate, but yeah. How many critical controls? Ah, okay, nice. Um, so just going to go down here. If people want to ask other questions, that's cool. I the guidance I give my clients, and it's not based on any science. I say maximum of 5 critical controls from a pure workload perspective. So if let's say, for example, we had 25 risks and we've got 5 critical controls, that's already 125 critical controls I need to manage, do assurance and all those things. For smaller players, or those that are starting out on their journey, I even say less, do a maximum of 3. Just find the ones that are most important, just do them well. Again, as opposed to trying to boil the ocean. So that's a rough guidance there. So if I come across an organization that's got 300 critical controls, and they've got, let's say, I don't know, 30 critical risks, then that feels a bit heavy. Probably half that. Artie, if an emergency shutdown relies on manual activation by an operator during an emergency, would you not consider it as a control or weak effective control? It's not independent, relying on human action. No, that's a great one. Without going deeper on the context, off the cuff, in the, where is it? Let me just go back here. When we talked about controls, where's the definition from critical control management? Hang on. I had it before here. So in the critical control management perspective, we have controls that are act object systems. So act controls are human actions only, 3 points of contact. Objects are just engineered things. So let's say guarding is an example of an object, doesn't need a human to do what it needs to do. And then we have systems, which are combinations. So an example of system is a seatbelt. A seatbelt is a physical object and a human action. So a person needs to wear a seatbelt for a seatbelt to be effective. So what you're describing here in the critical risk world, applying those definitions will be an example of a system control. So we have an object, which is the alarm and the process, and we have a human action, so someone needs to push it. When we do control effectiveness assessments, and there's a framework that we use for control effectiveness assessments, the human component is considered as part of the control, and generally controls that have a human component have lower effectiveness compared to those that don't have a human component. So using that framework. So what you're describing there, activation of emergency shutdown absolutely could be a control. When we get to the point of effectiveness, we can see, because a human involved wouldn't be as high effective as if one didn't have a human. And it'd be interesting, again, whether then you applied the test of, well, what's human error that could happen? Well, someone misses the button, someone doesn't push the button. Could that mean it defeats the control, and therefore could it actually be critical? What I also would say, again, not getting on my soapbox in the last 1 minute over, it's very hard to find a suite of controls that don't have humans involved. I think it's the aspiration. I think technology is helping us get to that point, but I also wouldn't say that we just throw out everything just because they don't all meet that process. I think that's a journey there. Hopefully that helps, mate. Um, any other questions, comments from anyone? You can either unmute, throw something in the chat.
Yeah,
I'm happy
Christian,
to, yeah,
I
go
got
for
a
it.
question, sorry.
Yeah.
This new energy-based safety comes from the ASME standard that also related to disease reporting. Yeah, it's related to that.
Sorry, mate, was your question about where does energy-based safety come from?
Yeah. I mean, this energy-based safety is coming from the ASME standard or related to this disease reporting?
Uh, I mean, I've got the slide here, and I know the guys in North America can help out a little bit more. So Matthew Halliwell, I had some wording here. Hang on, let me go all the way back, mate. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, Matt Halliwell Construction Safety Research Alliance, and I think those guys, the Suncor guys, know way more about this. Yeah, if you look up Dr. Matthew Halliwell, had a pretty good book. It's grounded in, they did a fair bit of research. It actually came out of their research they did, the framework of energy-based safety. If you do some Googling on energy-based, damaging energies and go back in time, you'll see other authors there also talked about it. My interpretation is they've been able to bundle it up in a way that is easy to digest. Now, is there some type of global standard or whatever for it? I don't know. I've essentially just consumed the book, done a fair bit of reading, and just been applying it. I don't know if any other guys can help. Any other questions, comments from anyone? And I'm happy to stay on the line. So look, for those that need to go, thank you for your time. I appreciate that. Artie, you and I, mate, we got up early. Thanks for joining me early. But I'm happy we can keep chatting. If someone else has another question, I'll remove spotlight. Anyone got a question, comment? Danielle, have you got something? Your microphone's maybe not working, but something you want to throw on the chat we want to riff more off? No. Unfortunately. You're going, Artie?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks, mate.
Christian.
No worries. We'll chat again. We can stay on the line. I'll keep an eye on the chat there, Danielle. Sarah, Diego, do you guys have a question or a comment, something in the chat? If not, I'm sure, Oscar, you've probably got something else you want to riff off? All right, go,
No,
Oscar.
thank you. No, thank
Yep.
you so much. I mean, in this moment, we have a requirement from the brand. So they require to report disease, right? Potential, significant,
Yep.
incident, free, okay. So we are working on that. So that's why I was asking about the standard or the guide that talks about energy-based safety.
Yeah. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. And I don't know if that language has wandered over into South America yet. Um, that'll be interesting. It has?
Yeah. We
Okay.
have to report those species, so that's why we are
Yeah,
working on
gotcha.
that.
Okay, gotcha. And there was a good paper. If you look at Construction Safety Research Alliance, I think there's some really good papers in there where they've done some pretty good unpacking. Pretty helpful. Yeah. Um, all right, Danielle, I see you typing. That's cool. We'll give it a chance. Artie, are you still here, mate? Is there something else you wanted to mention?
No, nothing else from me.
You're good. So process safety, I think, because you said you do some process safety work as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be interesting to see how the principles of process safety apply here. I've got it in the back of my mind. Do you when just going through that, is there anything that you could see as similarities or it sort of complements process safety from what you're doing?
Yeah, it's very similar. What you've done, uh, using the bow tie analysis.
Yeah.
So look at all of the potential hazards or causes,
Hmm.
and the pathways leading into the top events, which is the MUEs
Hmm.
or major accident, as the top events. And then you got the preventative control,
Yeah.
and the reactive mitigative controls. Uh, with the safety case, you need to demonstrate that the risk has been reduced to a lab or sub depending on where
Yeah.
you are. So
Yeah.
you need to do cumulative risk assessment with uh, semi QRA, SQRA, or QRA. So using LOPA for chemical plants, then you can demonstrate the the risk by putting controls have been reduced to sub or a lab.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the differences with the process
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. And that's where I see that process safety. It's like the wrapper. It sort of wraps it all together,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to be able to do that overview of, well, have we done everything that we could have done? Is as low as reasonably practical or
Mm.
achievable? Yeah, I feel that actually adds value. Um, Danielle, energy-based safety. It feels like it would miss energy sources. The idea of the work and ceiling. Yeah, seems like it's also people die away from the job front, walking through parking lots late at night with no room. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. Oof. That's a great one. What are my thoughts on that? Um, one of the things that I talk about, rightly or wrongly, is if we're relying on the frontline worker to identify to be the only sorry to for them to identify the things that can kill them on the day through whatever tools they have, then there's something absent in our management systems that support the worker. So the classic case is, well, I've got my pre-job checklist. Oh, they didn't identify the thing, and then they end up getting the thing. Um, then what I talk about, I give the idea of, if like I can't draw it on my little whiteboard, but if we have the person and they're surrounded by the management systems, like the circle around the person, and we unpack this in the training and say, well, what are the management systems or aspects of our management system that support the worker on the job on the day, that helps them know what are the risks and what are the key controls. And then we start going into the pre-job assessment supervision. What are the artifacts, the permits or the tools they're using on the job, even into like the work planning process. In theory, if we're planning work, we should know what are the things that people are going to be exposed at the point of time, and then what things need to be in place. So we go upstream. Um, like you're talking about, we talked about the broad brush risk assessment before. The organization should have already done all the work with what are the things that can kill people and what do we need to put in place. And hopefully that language that's congruent between the system and the person. And I feel like one positive with the energy-based safety is it's rolled up easy to understand categories. At the same time, if I'm doing deep work with an organization to identify what are their critical risks, I'm going to go 2 layers deeper than the energy-based safety categorization. Yeah, I need to. Yeah, so I do we run a 2-day critical risk management masterclass. So essentially the ICMM framework end to end. Um, we go through that. So organizations that either haven't done it before at the start of their journey or want to refresh, because a lot of people, they know parts of it but don't know the whole thing. And so we mix the theory and the practical application. We sit together 2 days, go through the whole framework, and we talk about those things. Well, what does good look like with implementation? You might have a great system, but the worker is none the wiser. So that's what we do that in, mate. And I've done it for people overseas, either in person or virtually, or I've got a few people overseas your way actually that are interested in it. So who knows, I might have to come out and do it over there. What else? Oscar, you still here? Do you have another question, comment, mate? It was good. The sun's coming up too, so it's nice. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I will keep you in mind, Danielle, and you guys, because we're going to do just starting a big project with Nutrien. So there's going to be a pull to come over that way fairly soon. And so it kind of makes sense. There's a few other people wandering around North America too that have talked about that. So yeah, we'll do. Good. All right, where else do we want to go, Oscar? What's your other question? We can go in the weeds, mate.
No. For the moment, no. Just this sudden release of energy that for us we
Yeah.
need to have. I mean, we need to start to report all that potential sieves. So we're working
Yep.
on that. That's why I was asking about the integration with
The potential
those critical
sieves.
controls management.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, gotcha. Gotcha, mate. All right. Perfect. So yeah, really keen hopefully if this is landed for you guys and if you go and play with some stuff, really keen to see what you find. I'm working with a client at the moment. We're applying these. There's two clients. Certainly in the bow ties now playing around with, like you just saw, putting in those critical steps, but just using a different language. And that is really cool because this is the first time I've seen a list of life-saving rules come from some type of risk basis. Normally it's just well, here's the activities and you know, what's one of the ones I saw without getting a soapbox, always be, was it always follow safety procedures was one of the ones I saw. And it's like, okay, yeah, good luck with that. But if we can have well thought out human actions that correlate to the point of no return from the exposure to the energy source, I think that's where we need to be. So that's cool. All right. No other questions. Everyone's cool. Thank you for joining. You know where to find me. Absolutely happy to have a chat. I'm pretty passionate about this. So it's Friday. Well, it's Friday morning here. What's it, Thursday afternoon over there? Thanks for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon. Ali, have a good Friday, mate, and we'll chat again soon, hey? Yes, no worries. Daniel, we'll do more of it. Thank you. Have a good one. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thanks so very much.